Welcome to Space Drift, please subscribe. This is gonna blow your mind. In August 2025, the global economy teeters on the brink of a trade war, a situation that has been brewing for months. The tension is palpable as nations brace for the impact of aggressive trade policies. These policies are driven by the United States under the leadership of Donald Trump, who has made it clear that he intends to put America first, no matter the cost to international relations. The U.S. has imposed steep tariffs on nations it accuses of undermining its foreign policy. This move has notably targeted the BRICS bloc, which now includes new members like Saudi Arabia and Indonesia. These countries are seen as both economic competitors and political adversaries. India, for instance, faces a staggering 50% tariff due to its reliance on Russian oil. This has caused significant strain on its economy, which is heavily dependent on energy imports to fuel its growth. Meanwhile, Brazil is being penalized for political reasons, adding another layer of complexity to the already fraught international landscape. The Brazilian government has been vocal in its opposition to U.S. policies, leading to increased tariffs on its exports. Critics have been quick to point out the contradictions in U.S. policy. Despite the harsh tariffs, the U.S. continues to import critical materials from Russia, highlighting a glaring inconsistency that has not gone unnoticed by the international community. European allies, on the other hand, face lower tariffs even though they continue to trade with Russia. This has exposed a double standard in U.S. policy, causing friction among traditional allies, and raising questions about the true motives behind these trade measures. Adding fuel to the fire, Trump's ultimatum for a ceasefire in Ukraine has escalated tensions further. This move has put major economies like China and India in a difficult position, as they navigate the complex web of international diplomacy and economic interests. The stage is set for a dramatic response that could reshape the global economy for decades. Investors are on edge, world leaders are in constant communication, and the general public watches anxiously as the situation unfolds. The decisions made in the coming months will have far-reaching consequences, potentially altering the course of international trade and relations for years to come. In a dramatic escalation of global economic tensions, the BRICS nations have taken a historic step in response to what they describe as U.S. economic aggression. For years, the United States has imposed sanctions and tariffs on countries it views as competitors, often justifying these measures as necessary for national security or to protect American industries. However, these actions have been met with growing frustration among emerging economies, who see them as attempts to maintain U.S. dominance in global trade. Now, in a move that has sent shockwaves through international markets, the BRICS alliance, comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, has announced a sweeping 100% tariff on all U.S. imports. This means that every American product entering these countries will instantly double in price, making it far less competitive and potentially crippling U.S. exporters who rely on these vast markets. The decision was not made lightly. It was the result of months of high-level discussions and careful coordination among BRICS leaders, including Brazil's President Lula da Silva and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Their goal is clear: to force the United States back to the negotiating table and to demand fairer treatment for their economies. These tariffs are more than just an economic measure. They are a powerful political statement. By acting together, the BRICS nations are sending a message that they will no longer accept what they see as unfair trade practices and economic bullying by the U.S. This is a direct challenge to the established global order, where the U.S. has long held sway. For countries like India and Brazil, the stakes are especially high. Both nations have faced repeated U.S. tariffs and sanctions, which they argue infringe on their sovereignty and hinder their economic growth. By joining forces with other BRICS members, they hope to create a more balanced and equitable global trading system. The BRICS bloc now represents a significant portion of the world's population and economic output. With over 40% of the global population and a rapidly growing share of global GDP, their collective action carries enormous weight. This move is a clear assertion of their rising power and influence on the world stage. The announcement has triggered intense debate among policymakers, economists, and business leaders worldwide. Many see it as a pivotal moment, a turning point where rhetoric has given way to concrete action. The BRICS nations are no longer content to simply voice their grievances. They are now willing to take bold steps to protect their interests and reshape the global economic landscape. As the world watches closely, all eyes are on the United States. How will the American economy respond to this unprecedented challenge? Will it lead to a new era of negotiations or spark a deeper trade war with consequences for everyone? One thing is certain, the global balance of power is shifting, and the impact of these tariffs will be felt for years to come. The BRICS tariffs will hit American consumers hard, doubling the cost of imported goods. Essential items from electronics to groceries will see dramatic price hikes. This inflation, driven by trade war, risks a severe recession, eroding savings and purchasing power. The Trump administration's hope for domestic manufacturing is a long-term goal, not a quick fix. In the short term, scarcity and high prices will prevail. Economic pain could lead to political unrest, as voters struggle with rising costs. The administration faces pressure to reverse course before lasting damage occurs. The BRICS tariffs will devastate key U.S. industries, starting with agriculture. American farmers, reliant on exports to BRICS nations, face a collapse in demand. Warehouses will overflow with unsold goods, leading to financial ruin for many. The technology and manufacturing sectors, dependent on global supply chains, will also suffer. Rising input costs and lost export markets create an existential crisis for U.S. corporations. The dream of a manufacturing renaissance collides with trade war realities, pushing the U.S. towards economic isolation. U.S. trade policies have unexpectedly unified the BRICS bloc into a formidable alliance. Historical rivalries like those between China and India are set aside in the face of a common threat. The BRICS nations are accelerating plans for an alternative financial system, reducing reliance on the US dollar. The inclusion of Saudi Arabia and Indonesia strengthens the bloc's economic weight. The US intended to isolate BRICS members, but instead catalyzed a powerful, unified bloc. This may be the most enduring legacy of the 2025 trade wars. The escalating US-BRICS trade conflict is forcing countries around the world to make difficult decisions as they navigate an increasingly fractured and unpredictable economic landscape. The old certainties of global trade are being upended, and nations must now weigh their alliances, economic interests, and long-term security in ways not seen since the Cold War era. US allies in Europe and Asia are finding themselves at a crossroads, facing tough choices as they are caught between the economic demands of Washington and the growing influence of the BRICS bloc. For many, the pressure to pick a side is mounting, with the risk of alienating one superpower or the other looming large over every decision. The European Union in particular faces the threat of recession and severe energy shortages if it chooses to comply fully with US demands for economic decoupling from BRICS nations. The continent's industries, already strained by high energy prices and supply chain disruptions, could see further decline, leading to job losses and social unrest. Meanwhile, Japan and South Korea, two of America's closest partners in Asia, are grappling with the possibility of economic destabilization if they are forced to decouple from BRICS economies. Their export-driven industries and financial markets are deeply intertwined with both the West and the emerging BRICS powers, making any sudden shift fraught with risk. For developing nations, the BRICS model is becoming increasingly attractive. Many see it as a path to economic growth with fewer political strings attached, offering new opportunities for trade, investment, and infrastructure development. As the global order shifts, these countries are re-evaluating their traditional partnerships and considering new alliances. The recent expansion of BRICS, now including countries like Nigeria and Thailand, is a clear sign of its growing influence and appeal. This broader coalition is reshaping the balance of power, giving a stronger voice to nations that have often felt sidelined in the traditional global order. Major powers like China and India are openly defying US pressure, providing diplomatic and economic cover for smaller nations that wish to chart their own course. Their leadership is emboldening others to resist American influence and seek alternative partnerships. As the US doubles down on its sanctions policy, it risks isolating itself from a rapidly changing world. The choices made today will shape the global economic order for decades to come, and the stakes have never been higher. The US dollar's dominance faces its greatest threat as the BRICS nations seek alternatives. The trade war accelerates efforts to conduct trade in local currencies, bypassing the dollar. The inclusion of Saudi Arabia in BRICS challenges the petrodollar system. A shift away from the dollar would increase US borrowing costs and interest rates. The BRICS coalition has the motive and means to expedite the dollar's decline. The world moves towards a more multipolar currency system. The 2025 trade crisis marks a shift to a multipolar geopolitical era. US trade policies expose the limits of American power, accelerating the rise of a BRICS-led bloc. The US must now compete and cooperate with other major powers. The era of unchecked globalization is over, replaced by parallel economic ecosystems. Nations and corporations must navigate a more complex international environment. The US faces a choice: continue unilateralism or adapt to a multipolar world. The path it chooses will shape the global order for the 21st century.